A brand new Super Nintendo game just dropped by Mega Cat Studios on a real cartridge that plays on real Super Nintendo hardware in 2026. That alone is insane. And the game is Super Fanger, a top-down arcade survival game where the objective is simple: collect bubbles while these pesky birds try to catch you and zap you. Basically a friendly game of tag, but with death. Collect enough bubbles with each of the 3 titled characters and you can move on to the next stage. So for instance, in the first stage, you have to collect 12 bubbles in a single round, and you do that with all 3 characters and you can unlock the next stage. But the first stage is what I've been working on all day, if that tells you how brutal this game is. And you can check the high scores of the most bubbles you've ever gotten from a stage, but I promise you it won't be much more than the required minimum. So you start on this garden level where the art is bold, it's crisp, it's bright, and it pops on real hardware. I can't compare it to anything other than my all-time favorite, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. And man, that is high praise. No, it doesn't have horror icons running around, but it's the same vibe. So you know I feel right at home with a Zombies Ate My Neighbors vibe and feel in the opening level chase. I mean, come on, I've been practicing this for 30 years. But let's first talk about the characters. You've got Reggie, a blue bird, and he's got a getaway button. Some call it a dash, I call it a haul, because when you press that button for 1 complete second, Reggie is hauling. Then there's Fritz, who is just the cutest little pixel Grim Reaper you'll ever see, and he can shock the birds to trap them briefly. And then there's Nixie, the octopus, who can lay down sticky ink behind her to slow the birds down. Every character runs with Y, but your stamina drains while sprinting or using abilities. B is your action button, so that's your dash, your shock, or your ink depending on who you picked. And it takes maybe 2 rounds to understand the controls. They're tight and responsive, and you will immediately get it. So the game is pick up and play in that sense, and it only takes a round or 2 to get the feel of it, but it is not pick up and play in the way that you're going to be good at it anytime soon. Because the game lies to you. You'll die and immediately go, okay, I know what to do now. Hop back in the stage, get caught by the grim tweeters, and say, God, I was so close. And suddenly an hour goes by and you didn't even know it. And speaking of those grim tweeters that are after you, let's talk about those birds chasing you for a moment. They are faster than you, they are petty, and they are smart. Bro, they will rarely fall in line behind you. One will always be chasing you in the rear, and the other one is beelining it to cut you off. So you can't turn around, and they have the angle on you. And if you try to put an obstacle between you and them, do you think they're both gonna come around the same way so you can escape? Not happening. These suckers always know to split up and force you to make a decision. So of course this leads you to wanting to hold down that sprint button, but if you do it too long and run out of stamina, you hit that tired status effect. And that's exactly what the grim tweeters want you to do. Get tired, slow down, because then you're basically a sitting duck waiting to get pecked down. So you always want to be very strategic to let off the gas for a second every now and again. And the longer you play, the birds get faster depending on how many bubbles you collect. There's also a small arrow on the screen that points you to the direction of the next bubble if it's not visible, sort of like Ghoul Patrol when you're hunting down that next survivor. And as soon as you pick up that bubble, you want to make sure to keep an eye on that arrow and not waste any time. There are also power-ups for you to pick up and get a slight edge over the killer. I mean, birds. The 2 power-up pickups are a pumpkin, which refills your stamina, and a lightning bolt that gives you a haste effect, which is probably the best advantage in the game. The 2 negative pickups are a red mushroom and this purple flower. The red mushroom temporarily disables your special ability, and the flower makes it to where you can only move horizontally and vertically and takes away those diagonal movements. And you do not realize how important moving diagonally is until you're in a game of tag and now you're moving like a rook on a chessboard. And strangely enough, the pick-me-ups are only in stage 1. After that, it's more about interacting with your environment, which I'll get to in a moment. So if I had to quickly describe its core gameplay, I would probably most compare it to Dead by Daylight. And I just need you to hear me out on this one. Hear me out. You have killers constantly stalking you while you hunt objectives in a fixed tiny map. The killers, if you want to call them that, are faster than you. You're trying to use the environment to squeeze out tiny advantages, and you prolong chases with smart loops. And to bring that gameplay loop to the Super Nintendo with a bright pixel cartoony aesthetic, bro, it can't get any better. And I only have one complaint, and you guys know I love to complain. So if there is only one complaint, that speaks very highly of Super Fanger. But they did us dirty with these generous hitboxes. I mean, I know they were probably on purpose to give us that arcade feel, but bruh. Here's one instance from my previous live stream where I beat the game. That needs to be on video, because I'm going to send that into Mega Cat. I did not touch that purple flower. Bro, you know I didn't touch that purple flower. A game of tag and generous hitboxes don't always go together. So I ended up deciding my favorite character was Reggie. Me and Reggie had a bond. There was chemistry. I finally found a win on stage 1 with him. Now at the beginning, when I got hit with that harsh reality that I have to beat each stage with not only him, but the other 2 jobbers as well before advancing, well, that hurt. But honestly, it did keep the game fresh. Each character forces you to approach the same level slightly differently. Same haunting challenge in front of you, but different tools. Because with Reggie and Fritz, you're more on the offensive, but with Nixie, it's more of a knowing when to lay those defensive ink traps. So the stages themselves start to mix things up a little bit after that opening backyard game of tag. You'll encounter a warehouse with slamming doors and floors that move, a library with electrical problems, and the same lab Frankenstein was created in. In the warehouse, like I said, you got doors that are on timers that open and close, which sometimes work perfect for you when you barely make it right in the door and then it slams right behind you, right on those birds, and puts a much-deserved gap in between you and them. But also sometimes you'll see your opening and you'll race towards the door and bam, it closes right in your face and you still got 2 maniac birds closing in and you have to panic for another route. They also got these little floor pads like in those big airports that you can use to walk faster and gain more ground. So you can use those to your advantage, just scurry away, but sometimes the bubble placement goes against the grain and you have to backtrack. Well, then you're basically walking up a down-facing escalator not getting anywhere. And it's mistakes like that that will get you electrocuted. The third room is a library that's more open, so not many obstacles to use to put between you and the birds, besides this one freaking nightstand in the middle of the library floor with 1 candle on it. I cannot tell you how many times I got stuck on that one nightstand. And what is the purpose of this thing? Only one person can even sit there and what? Read by candlelight in the middle of the library? Why do we even have a single candle in the library? Hey, you know what easily burns? Books. I mean, why is there a candle? What is this, the 1800s? God, this and that side shelf over there was the literal death of me. So the thing about the library is about a minute or 2 in the game, the lights are going to go out, and at that point, everybody gets a huge speed boost, you and the birdies. So you're all running at Mach 10 through a library in the dark, and this makes for some very intense chases. Because you're trying to avoid bookshelves and tables with candles while everybody is hauling tail. So this takes away from the tight cornering that you're used to because your character cannot stop and turn on a dime. Oh, and you still have to collect bubbles, by the way. And then there's this parrot librarian that's just letting it all happen. Bro, you clearly see I'm getting chased, and we are not checking out books. But you know what? That's okay. You know, I'm just going to leave you some ink on the carpet since you don't want to help out. The fourth room is a lab that gives off the vibe that somebody's DNA was just altered right before you arrived because you got lightning bolts everywhere, and it's just a lot of mad scientist energy in here. So the difference here in the fourth world is that this is the first time the evil Tweety birds can shoot things at you, which is a tiny bit of a problem. Now you can also shoot back, but of course it's not very equal. Why would it be? So how this happens is there are different trigger pads that you can walk across as you run around collecting bubbles. If one of the birds runs across a touchpad and it's blue, then they will get an electric charge that they can then shoot you. However, the same applies to you. The only difference is they are infinitely more accurate than you are. If they walk across a touchpad, there is a 95% chance they are going to shoot and stun you and catch up with you and possibly electrocute you. However, if you were blessed enough to get the offensive strike, then you won't shoot anywhere near that direction. I mean, look at this. It's not even close. I finally found out that you're shooting in the opposite direction in which you're running, but to be accurate and lead them like a duck in the direction they're heading, and you don't even know where you're heading and hit them on the nose as you're running and trying to collect bubbles and fight for your life, I mean, it's pretty much impossible. But I promise you, they're going to hit you with theirs. I found it best just to run over the trigger pads and hope for absolute blind luck to help me out. Or at the very least, just walk over the pad to trigger it so it takes away their ability to shoot me. Because it seems like their shots are perfectly aimed and timed. But how does that even make sense? Especially when I play with Reggie. I mean, we're all birds here. Same species, no thumbs. Why is it different? But just like an arcade game, you gotta have a little bit of luck to win this one. And every round the bubbles pop up randomly for you to collect. But sometimes the bubbles spawn across the map every single time you turn around, and while this is happening, the death birds are getting faster. So it really helps if you start around and get closer bubble spawns so you can rack up bubbles quickly before the tweeter birds become speed demons. Having a good string of placements really seems to help beat the stage. Okay, so this next part is a spoiler, so if you don't want a spoiler here, here's your chance to duck out because I'm about to reveal the fourth character in which you unlock. Alright, Here it is. Once you beat all the stages with your 3 characters, you will eventually unlock a CRT TV named Addle that looks like a little Teletubby. So this is the 4th character. Now, as you see there, a new holo emblem of Addle next to each stage pops up. So to really beat the game, you need to go and beat them all again with Addle now. And how hard will that be? Well, it's going to depend on the strength of Addle's special ability, so what is it? You literally Teletubby port. Once those antennas start wiggling with that glorious 210 power, you can hit the same action button and you will trade places with the death bird farthest away from you, which is by far the best ability and comes in so clutch in those moments where you are about to get trapped. Okay, so now you're asking, what happens when I beat all the stages once again with Addle? Well, at first, you get some little mugs that show up on the mantle and the character select screen, only to find out that they are candle holders. And then I thought with each stage win, the character select screen is going to be put together more cozy-like. Maybe some candles, pictures hung, coffee made, all topped with a fire and a fireplace. But instead, you just get some candles lit, which at first I thought was super low-key kind of lame, but then I had a developer's comment on my playthrough video that let me know the unlocked lit candles will cut down the cooldown or charge up of your character's special moves in half. And you can toggle that effect in the selection screen by pressing X. What? That is awesome! And this leads you to obviously wanting to check out the effects of that and then replacing all of your new high scores. There's also a 2-player co-op option in the arcade mode. On the arcade selection screen, press a button on the second controller to activate it. The second player controls a small ghost that distracts the birds and grants the main player brief invincibility. But I think my favorite part of the overall game is just the feeling you get when you're so close to your required bubble count. Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty, and you're fighting the birds and your nervous system and the environment that's changing around you. And let me just say this, your pride will not let you put this game down. You will always feel like a kid caught you in a game of tag and you just wasn't ready, or you would obviously win. So then you boot it up again saying that you're ready, and then you just rinse and repeat. So Super Fanger is simple, but it's bold, it's crisp, and it's mostly fair. Mostly. And it's got that addicting arcade loop where you're just never satisfied walking away. So I had an absolute blast playing this game, and I think any retro gamer and Super Nintendo fan needs to add it to their collection because, man, it is a ton of fun. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Would a mediocre gamer like Super Fanger? The answer is yes. Yeah.